So Dublin 223, Laois 7 points. I'm here with Irish Times journalist Eamon Donoghue. Eamon, in the end, a very comprehensive win for Dublin in the end, 22-point victory. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, well, that's what we expected, really, in terms of the comfort of it. You're kind of looking more for, with these Dublin wins, for just the general, is there anything new in their style of play, and to see kind of, is there any new players emerging, or maybe any holes that get shown up by opposition. I think that the positives that they can take is the kind of, there seems to be maybe a little bit better discipline from the Westmeath game. And yeah, just players coming on, obviously more so than new players. There's Paul Mannion coming on, Brian Howard played very well when he came on. So it's good to see, obviously, their key players seeing a bit more form. And yeah, so it's very hard to judge from it. But the only negatives, I think, maybe Laois up front, their full forward line did cause Dublin some trouble. So other teams can maybe see how they did that and how they went about it, but they were nowhere near strong enough to mount a serious challenge. The only thing that kept them in it in the first half was the goalkeeper with some great saves.
And I suppose, like, from a Dublin point of view, obviously a lot of good standout performances, like Kieran Kilkenny hitting 1-4, and even Cormac Costello kind of coming back into the fray as well. But who do you think in the end was kind of like the man of the match, or the standout performer on the day?
Fenton for me was just imperious. Yeah, like the quality of ball that he was putting in. Even earlier in the game when Dublin were a little bit scrappy, he was just quality, and his points were 4 points from midfield. He hit the post as well. So easy could have been 5, and like he laid off other scores. He could have easily kicked a couple more, which is from the middle of the field. Like, it's just, you're so used to seeing him get these totals now. But like, that's serious scoring, and he's fetching ball as well. And the Laois are actually quite strong around there, John O'Loughlin and stuff as well. So him and Kieran Kilkenny, as you said, 1-4. Following on from the Westmeath game, when he was brilliant as well. He was very impressive. Cormac Costello, when he came on, was very good. 7 points that he got in the end. He seems to have bulked up a lot, which is interesting. He seems to put on quite a lot of weight, the legs and stuff like that as well, which, you know, shows that these players are still improving. And yeah, like, I thought Brian Howard, when he came on, was very impressive as well. But yeah, Fenton and Kilkenny are kind of the two players now who are really, really pushing things forward, like, for Dublin, and they were definitely the two standout players again today.
And I suppose, obviously, like, with a lot of players kind of opting out, obviously Jack McCaffrey and then Dermot Connolly retired, I suppose I'd imagine it's good then as well, like, from, you know, I'm a Dublin fan as well, obviously, so it's good to see, you know, new faces in there like Tom Lahiff and Keane Murphy and Robbie McDade. Like, I think one of the, you know, the things that Jim Gavin was so good at was just recycling the team year after year. So I suppose from a Dublin point of view yourself, it must be good to see, you know, more emerging players coming into the team as well.
Yeah, definitely. All of those players. Lahiff seems to be a really good option around the middle. He keeps things simple, but he's on a lot of ball. He does everything well, and that's perfect for Dublin. Like, it kind of reminds you almost of Fenton when he first came through, and that, like, he just does everything well. And, you know, Dublin don't really have a place for someone who can do, you know, some things brilliantly, and then kind of other things kind of disrupts their momentum or disrupts the flow of their play. And he just comes in and he does everything simply, works really hard. And he's physically a good option around there as well. I thought Bugler as well, again, he's just, you know, such a good score getter from that kind of middle sector. And he was impressive. Robbie McDade as well was brilliant. So he seems to add a lot. He's just kind of very flighty in how he carries the ball forward. Obviously, Dublin have a lot of great athletes, but he's kind of a different type of athlete, the way he kind of just glides over the ground. And without Jack McCaffrey, he definitely has a role to play in terms of adding that kind of variety to their attack. So yeah, there's new faces coming in there. Like, over the last two championship games, the guys you named as well, and Aaron Byrne as well coming in there. So Paddy Small was one who kind of was really looked to be cemented himself. It's kind of that left-footed attacker, but he didn't have a great game. And Paul Mannion came in, but it just shows the competition, because, you know, from his club form and from how he played against Westmeath, you know, you can't write him off at all for a starting place. And Paul Mannion obviously is an incredible player. So when you've got those two players going for a position, it just shows the level of, when you're talking about taking things for granted, that, like, they can't really take anything for granted, them players, because they will lose their place. Like, so that's the strength of them.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like, especially because I don't think Paul Mannion was even involved in the Westmeath game. So I suppose to get him back involved, like that's definitely massive, like from a Dublin point of view. I suppose like from a Laois point of view, do you think there's any real positives that they can take from this game? I mean, I think the result was really kind of like what everyone expected in the end, but like from having a look at it, like obviously in the first 20 minutes, like they did stay kind of fairly competitive until Sean Bugler's goal. But I suppose in your opinion, like is there any kind of positives that Laois can take away from this game?
Yeah, I think it just showed that their full forward line, Evan Carroll, Gary Walsh, and Paul Kingston, like they can cause trouble to any team, because they did cause Dublin trouble, and they were direct and they went at them. Um, they actually missed, for all the chances they created, Laois, in the first half. They missed they hit a lot of wides. So that kind of efficiency. I know Mike Quirk afterwards, kind of the thing he was lamenting most was their lack of efficiency in comparison to Dublin. I think he was saying there was similar enough stats. I haven't seen them yet in terms of chances created between Laois and Dublin in the first half, but obviously very different in comparison between what was taken. And Laois were kind of, could be quite happy with how they dealt with Dublin's kick out. They kind of did put a bit of pressure on it. It's obviously very hard to stop Cluxton. But yeah, I think their inside line, they did show quite a lot of fight, and physically they were beaten, but like they weren't blown away like you kind of see some teams in Leinster. So it's been a good year for Laois. You know, they've kept the Division 2 status in kind of remarkable enough fashion, and they got the win over Laois, so, or over Longford the last day. So they can be happy enough. But the problem with them is kind of just personnel, and everything kind of just seems to yo-yo with them over the years. So they need to kind of keep a manager in place and keep momentum and build, and keep the same kind of core players and add to it, rather than losing some more coming in. But they definitely have a foundation to go off in terms of kind of physicality and hard work around the middle, and in the full forward line, and also goalkeeper as well. Like, the keeper made a few dodgy enough runs up the field, but he's a brilliant shot stopper. He's got variety to his kickouts, and in like their goalie the last few years of Graham Brody was an All-Star nominee, so they've got two brilliant goalies. And we've seen like Sean Patton, Stephen Cluxton, how important a good goalie is. Seen in the Connacht Championship how, you know, not having a good goalie can make a big difference. So that definitely is a foundation, a strong forward line, bit of physicality around the middle, and a very good goalkeeper. So they have a lot of positives to take over from their year, if not necessarily from today.
Hmm. Yeah, and I suppose kind of moving on then, like kind of looking ahead, I suppose, to the Mead game next week. Obviously, Mead with 12 goals in their past two games. Like, what do you think kind of going ahead into that game? Do you think that will be a bit more competitive maybe than previous Leinster finals? Like, I was kind of thinking that maybe this might be Dublin's trickiest challenge in Leinster, you know, maybe going back till 2013 or 2012. But what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, well, one thing which we have to take into account now is that, like, we could play, because the games are coming so thick and fast. You know, injuries and weather are going to have a massive impact. So, like, if you had you know a key Dublin player or two to pick up an injury, and then you go down into Crow Park and it's absolute, swirling winds, lashing rain, and Meath just get really stuck in. That changes the goalposts a lot. I think myself, I I'm not massively, sold by this Meath team, to be honest. I thought Kildare would beat them, and Kildare were overall the better team today, but Meath suckered them with them goals. And that goal threat you've seen even with the last time Meath did beat Dublin in Championship, it was goals. So goals, when you're scoring goals like that, in games where they're showing they can score goals in games where they're not in control. So they'll need that against Dublin because they won't be in control. But I think that Meath are very fast. They do get numbers behind the ball. I seen the first half an hour of that game, and it was like the Connacht final was scrappy, but in comparison of watching Go Mayo and watching Meath Kildare, literally was like watching the Visions down Meath Kildare game. Like, it was so lacked intensity, and Meath will really need to bring intensity and bring physicality to that game. So for me, unless they can have some kind of a freak weather condition or some kind of a freak scenario, I can see Dublin winning it comfortably enough, but within themselves, because that's how they're playing at the moment. So, they won't get into the 20 plus winning region that they have against Westmeath and against Laois today. But I can see them winning by 10 plus, so or around the 10-point mark.
Yeah, and I suppose for me, like they'll really need to kind of clock more points on the board as well, because obviously, like with Dublin, they don't concede too many goals in the championship, and you'd imagine like that'll be one thing that Desi will definitely look at with this Meath side, kind of going ahead into that game, is obviously getting bodies back when Meath are attacking, because he'll have looked at that as probably the main kind of way that Meath could probably hurt Dublin going into that game.
Yeah, well, because it's confidence, isn't it, when you're going for goal? Because if you're used to scoring them, and when you have a 3-on-2 situation, you're going to go for it more so than otherwise. Like, and Meath have serious pace. Brian Menton coming from midfield, Kyogan and these guys coming from the half back line, and then up top there's like Cillian O'Sullivan, who's just so fast and so direct. So yeah, the way they play, they do come in numbers, because they do get quite a good few guys behind the ball when they lose it. So it will be a test for Dublin in terms of that. I suppose it's kind of a very a weakened or lesser version of what Donegal do. Take away the intensity, strap away the intensity, and maybe add more pace and more threat, but take away the intensity. So it'll be a good test for Dublin in terms of dealing with that kind of counter attack. But yeah, Meath do have a lot of pace, so if Dublin can control that, they'll definitely take a lot from it. And last year, Meath, the last couple of years, Meath have been competitive in certain ways, but like Dublin will just tip away at the scores even when you're doing well, and then they'll have their strong periods. So one thing that you'd always kind of count for Meath in comparison to, say, Kildare coming up against Dublin, is Meath are very proud. So that should count for a lot, because they're going to go out with a sense, a kind of a bit of a belief that they're Meath and they have a chance, which other counties in Leinster don't have. So that definitely gives them a chance, and then they're the next best team in Leinster, they proved today. So those two things give a better test. The goal threat, is there, but as I said, I don't hold out much hope for them. Like in the league, they got a lot of credit, and rightly so, because they kind of hung in there in games, and they were losing by a lot. They kind of came back and fought hard. But for me, that kind of is very different than showing kind of getting results. So there's still a massive gulf between the two teams, in my opinion.
And I suppose obviously, like with a lot of kind of different pundits on the Sunday game and whatnot, I suppose everyone's kind of looking at ways that Dublin can be beaten and whatnot, and the fact that players are opting out and retiring. But is there really any evidence to suggest, do you think, that Dublin will be beaten this year? Because obviously with no Kerry in there, and with the fact that Dublin are now able to introduce even more new players to the scene, do you think there is any evidence that Dublin will be beaten this year?
I don't think there's any evidence to show that anyone is better than them. Definitely not. Even Kerry, before that shock defeat, I don't think there's any evidence to show that anyone is better than Dublin. But I think there is, in the way that Dublin are playing, they've become so controlled and they're winning games comfortably over the last number of years, that there is kind of the sense that will they be able to kind of turn it on against a team who are able to challenge them? And that's kind of that's the question for me that kind of stills over. When Dublin are going out and they're playing this, very possession-based game. It's not possession-based in terms of other teams. They're not just keeping the ball for the sake of it, but they are controlling the game, and everything's controlled. When they come up against a team who are going to kind of bring a bit more chaos because the game is going to be more competitive, are they going to be able to just kind of switch it on? In the All-Ireland final drawn game last year, they weren't at that full pace that they brought to the replay. So if a team kind of brings that to them and then finishes the job, maybe like the Kerry were presented with the last day, that's kind of the only chance the team has of beating them, which in essence is catching them on the hop. So, but in terms of someone being better than them all over, and a better squad and a better team and better in individual places, no, definitely not. Donegal, really strong. I don't think their backs or their overall squad is as good as Dublin. Mayo, middle third, definitely not. And, that efficiency up front, even though they're very strong in other places. And yeah, like Cork aren't really at that level yet, even though they've the Cork arrogance and they do have a lot of physicality around the middle as well, but they're not at that level yet. So that's where I'd be seeing it with. Definitely not as nobody as good as them, but there definitely is a chance of them being caught on the hop.
Yeah, I suppose it's definitely going to be tough to see who stops them. But yeah, anyway, cheers, Eamon, for coming on. Anyway, I appreciate your time.
Not at all.